Hey everyone, welcome to the Current Case Podcast. We're a group of four friends discussing the latest current events as they apply to our everyday lives. From foreign policy to local events, we cover it all as best we can in a manner not restrained by the bias of the big media corporations. We may not always agree with each other on certain topics, but that is what makes it all the more interesting. Being able to sit down and have a civil conversation on even the most controversial topics is a necessity for a better society.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Current Case Podcast. It is Season 2, Episode 4. Today's January 25th. Today we were supposed to get a big snowstorm. Schools were canceled yesterday in anticipation, and of course, looking out my window this morning, we got absolutely nothing. So, can't ever trust weathermen, including my older brother. So,
Jared has a family member for everything, guys.
I literally do. We're diverse people, what can I say? I mean, did you guys have trouble getting around today?
No.
Not too much, though. I think I probably got up and about earlier than most other people, seeing as I had to get to work by 5:30 in the morning.
Was there like anything on the ground at 5:30?
Slush and snow, mostly. Though the plow trucks were starting to make their first of their rounds.
No slick spots or anything like that?
There were some slick spots, but plow trucks already took care of that because, like I said, it was mostly just slush and snow.
Yeah. So definitely overhyped because I think they were talking about like 4 to 6 inches of snow in our area, and that didn't happen. I know it was supposed to get warmer today, but I think it got too warm overnight. So I bet the schools were like, oh, damn, get close too early. But whatever. Snow day's a snow day, I guess. What can you do? All right, but we have a bunch of different topics today. First thing we want to talk about is the advancement of AI. Of course, a couple months back, we had ChatGPT release, and months since it has basically exploded in popularity. What's it, like over a couple 100 million people, active users daily? It's really crazy right now, and what it can do is honestly simply amazing. I'm seeing headlines popping up that it's able to pass the bar exam for law school. I think it's able to pass the MCAT pretty easily. And it's like, wow, it's crazy. And of course, I've used it myself as a teacher. You got to give out essays and everything. And I've given it like some challenges, write me an essay about a certain topic, and it'll basically spit out an essay within like a couple of seconds. I even asked it to put in like an 8th grade level, and it just gave me the same essay, but simplified the language an 8th grader would use. Absolutely crazy what this program can do. At the same time, I mean, have you guys used it before?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I used it. I'm the one who introduced you to it a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
You're like, it's whatever.
I didn't say that. I was pretty impressed by it when you first showed it to me.
Well, it seemed pretty dismissive. You're like, oh, it's just like an online tool, whatever. Now that people kind of recognize what all it can do, it's starting to blow up and blow holes, especially in education.
Right. We have to crack down on it because it literally writes essays for you, and it can simplify the language. So there have to be blocks because otherwise it'd be considered using a cheating tool. So as of now, I know a lot of districts are aware of it and are trying to implement their own blocks around it, so kids cannot use it to write their own essays.
Yeah, it seems typical of education. Oh, this is really innovative and great for humanity. Blocks it.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Like, why not educate the students on how to properly use it? Just monitor them if they have to write an essay. How about you turn off the Chromebooks for once? They sit down with a piece of paper, a pen or a pencil or whatever, and they start like writing sentences in class. So they have their essay topic. How about they turn in like one paragraph each day for a week? Then boom, there's your 5-paragraph essay.
Mm-hmm.
No ChatGPT, no online sources, nothing. Just print out your sources, have them there, and then have them write the essay. Doesn't mean you have to like ban and blacklist everything.
Right.
Teach them how to use it to their advantage.
Right, and that's a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of people seem to be missing. Like a lot of these people that are really firmly anti-AI, they don't understand that there's a certain degree of knowledge you need in order to use it properly. Sure, some of these things you can just put in, write me an essay about blah, 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 and it'll do it. But it requires a degree of knowledge and understanding of the program and how it works in order to get it to produce a quality product that you want to use.
Plus, at the same time, it's like, well, yes, it is smart. Jared, you mentioned it was passing the LSAT and MBA programs.
Yep.
that doesn't mean it's smarter than us necessarily.
Mhm.
Like what I just said, it's like, we can outsmart it.
Right.
Just use pen and paper.
Mhm.
But everyone is so fast to just, ban, 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 trying to take an easy road. That's part of the problem is no one wants to think. And so everyone's thinking is just being outsourced to this artificial intelligence. It's like take a minute, pause, think about what you want to say, and then implement whatever comes to mind. Learn how to think.
I mean, I'm definitely not disagreeing there. I do think Chromebooks, especially, we're way too reliant, especially in the schools nowadays, because everyone has their own Chromebook. Even when I graduated, we didn't have our own. We got the loan, some from the library, but we still had to use a lot of paper, still writing and everything else. But nowadays, everything's basically online in Google Classroom and using other programs. So, of course, if something goes wrong, I feel like a lot of the times things are like always some type of issue we deal with every day that kind of screws up the educational process. I mean, I definitely agree. We do rely too much on technology. I think going back to the classic roots every once in a while isn't a bad thing at all.
There's a problem with a lot of previous generations, right? You get the adage of, well, remember back when we used chalkboards and chalk? It's like, how will children ever learn to use a chalkboard without getting dust all over themselves? Like, that's not the point we're trying to make here. The point is, kids should be self reliant and understand how to think for themselves and do their own independent work, both online with the current tools we have in society and offline. Because when everything is just online, 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 you may know how to do things. It doesn't mean you have the knowledge to do it if you don't have access to internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like what you just said there, Matt, can also translate beyond simple learning because teaching our kids to become self-reliant is kind of the whole point of them growing up. They need to be able to make their own path in the world. They need to be able to forge out their own life. How are you going to do that if it's basically something holding their hand the whole way?
Or you have social media, which is just essentially telling them how to live their life, and it's going to be very skewed and probably not end up in any positive aspect. And so it's like kids need, number one, time away from computers to think critically and develop their own sense of self and just learn how to think and reason through problems. And then the other part is they need to be, I guess, just offline for a while, hang out with friends, go explore, get their own personality instead of seeing whatever's trending on TikTok or Twitter, being like, oh, that's popular, I'm going to do that. Or that's popular, I'm going to do the opposite of that. So many people these days seem to just be downloading a personality based on what they see online. It's rotting society.
For sure, 100%. And it's not just like people's opinions or taste in music or stuff. It goes deeper than that. It's like their views on real societal issues that we face. Whatever's the popular opinion, the popular take, that's what they go with. It's, it ties back into that whole teaching them how to think for themselves thing. And I know I've mentioned it before. People today just don't really like to think for themselves because it's easier not to.
Are you saying it's wrong and that I base my opinions on whatever hashtags trending on Twitter? Come on, man.
More than likely, yes.
It's fine. But I mean, I agree with you guys there. And kind of this thing with the theme I wanted to touch on here with the AI rapid advancement. I'm kind of looking at this headline and kind of know what to think of it. So what it is, they're going to use an AI-powered robot lawyer to represent a defendant. So next month they're going to do this. February 22nd is the planned date. What this AI creation is going to do is tell the defendant in real time basically what to say in response to the prosecutor. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that's a good idea when you have AI telling you what to say now, responding to another person? It's like,
Here's where I think AI has an advantage over people is that it can search, find, and derive a formulation off of a huge data set way faster and much more deeply than any human can within a reasonable amount of time.
right.
So if it has access to all the case law in the United States, it's going to be very easy to pick it apart, find a relevant case, find the relevant section of the case, and then rebut whatever the prosecutor is saying.
Mm-hmm.
The AI is very good when it comes to factual information and logic, but usually when it's been presented before.
Right.
I think humans may not always seem like it, but I think we always will have that upper hand on our specialized, like creative, out of the box thinking that doesn't necessarily always rely on a previous data set.
Hmm. And I mean, there's always that big fear that this is going to take jobs away as AI continues to develop. Kind of just thinking back to when we went to a Steak and Shake this past Monday, those electronic, of course, not AI, but electronic ordering, because now they don't have people taking orders anymore. At Steak and Shake, you used to just go up to the desk and then someone would write down your order. And they do this at like several different fast food restaurants now too.
McDonald's has
Yeah,
had it for
McDonald's
years.
done it for a while now. You just place your order. Our order came like really fast, but the problem was screwed up. I'm not sure if that's like a human error right there, technological error.
I'd say it's human factor.
Hmm.
Because when you place an order on that, it generates a receipt and a printout. And
Yeah,
all of our orders were correct from what we placed on the screen. But of course, you have humans, and there's always a human element. And they messed up like every single one of our orders.
yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely think the humans messed that one up in
Mhm.
that instance.
And I'm assuming when they implement these type of ordering systems, I mean, they probably can cut back on their workforce in the restaurant. Like they don't need as many people working the front anymore. Either they put them somewhere else or just get rid of them. Really, all you need now is fry cooks and people to deliver the food. That's about it. It's that fear of taking jobs like this, for example. Would you rather have a real lawyer representing you or an AI program?
There's a perfect balance to be had somewhere for this. So, for instance, if a lawyer formulates a defense plan, whatever it may be, and also has an AI to review all the previous case law and find what's relevant for him, that way he can spend more time focusing on his argument rather than fact finding, I think it'd be a great mix. Similar point in radiology. I know there's a lot of AI technology looking at different scans and locating what might be wrong with patients, but I would feel much better having both a radiologist look at it and have an AI scan it to see if it notes anything. Having a perfect blend is probably what will happen in the future, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. The trick is it has to be used in conjunction versus just being reliant on AI the whole time.
You're trusting and people find the perfect blend in between. You don't think companies will just cut people because they don't need them anymore to save a profit.
It depends on the industry, but in medicine, I don't think people would go to a place that just has an AI.
Something else to kind of consider if businesses start basically cutting out workers from specific jobs and whatnots. That might also have a few different knock-on consequences in the fact that more people are no longer basically getting paid for certain jobs that have been taken over by AIs, and so what are people going to consume if they don't have anything to spend?
Yeah, the economy is just going to stop. It's what keeps a economy running. Supply and demand, right?
Correct.
If people don't have the money to spend, therefore the demand can be incredibly high, but no one's going to spend any money, so effectively it goes to zero. There's no exchange of money, therefore the economy ceases to exist.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a bit of a worst case scenario, but I definitely foresee that if companies become too reliant on AIs, I can definitely see the economy stagnating.
Well, let's go back to Steak and Shake. What I think would be a much better system is, let's say you had 6 people working per day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, 2 in the afternoon, whatever. It's an arbitrary number. And you were able to eliminate those 6 people with the use of technology. That pay that they had, 90% of it should go back to the other employees working there, the cooks, the managers, anyone else. So they should effectively get a pay raise because now they're increasing profitability and have the extra money to make sure that anything that slips by the AI or the ordering system, make sure it's correct. Like, you still need a human to oversee it and make sure that everything is running smoothly. Now, you may not need a whole management team, but you're still probably going to need one person there to make sure that everything works and have accountability.
That definitely sounds like a good balance.
Because then you're really reliant on the cooks and everyone else who is still on the team. Because, yeah, they get the orders, but they have to do it even better because there's nothing, you can't blame anyone else.
Yeah, there's no human middleman there that's taking your order that could have screwed it up, right? The machine records it properly
Yeah, so
pretty much
under
every
like
time.
pure capitalism, what this should create is a higher profit. Therefore, more money can go to the workers which in turn create a better, higher quality product, meaning the people who are now flipping burgers have more money to earn, therefore they're happier and can create a better product, therefore better serving customers, and therefore increasing profitability once again.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, what is popular now is just, oh, let's cut corners and let's see how much we can shave off and still put out a product. It doesn't have to be great. It's just, did a hamburger go out? Yes, good enough. All right.
It's
See
not
that?
just hamburgers either. It's also gaming as
Yes,
well.
yes.
It's everything.
See that everywhere.
I'm also kind of surprised that Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob hasn't cut out SpongeBob and Squidward entirely in favor of AI. If they are,
It's like, I'll come out here and say this. I'm a huge fan of capitalism. I think it's a great system. It's probably the only economic system that really works long term. But what we have going on right now,
it's not sustainable.
it's not sustainable. I don't really think it's capitalism, because the heart of capitalism is providing excellent product or service to others while maintaining profitability and growing. A lot of these places are just focused on getting the bare minimum out and then sucking all the profits dry. And that's really not what it's about. The heart of it is helping others.
Exactly correct. What we have today is not capitalism, at least not proper capitalism, not in its true form. This is corporatism, is what we've got going on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Second Gilded Age, I'd say. Of course, instead now a way to, back then they would abuse their workforce with intense labor. Of course, they didn't have things like workers' rights or proper working rights, so working long hours for minimum pay. I mean, we have that now, but they're kind of finding other exploits around that. So it's really, I definitely argue we are in a second Gilded Age in terms of just the corporations that are running
And
things
so-
at the moment.
So many people, especially like the squad and AOC, pushing for things like higher minimum wage and workers' rights. It's not necessarily wrong, and I don't disagree with it. However, I think it has a lot of faults, and I think the bigger issue that needs to be tackled is, like you said, Cameron, corporatism and greed. But I think it's a culture thing. I think that a lot of people just want money, so they'll do whatever they can just to increase that bottom line and have no sense of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, that's why these plans to raise the minimum wage and stuff don't work, because you can jack up the minimum wage as much as you want, but what happens every single time is that the giant corporations, the gas companies, grocery stores, all these places raise their prices accordingly. So you're not getting any extra because you're just spending more now. And until we find a way to put a stop to that, there's no point raising the minimum wage.
I think Walmart raised it to $14 an hour instead of 12. Come on. You gotta
Congratulations, you can afford like 3 more pieces of bread per week. Great. Thank you, Walmart, for being so
No, that bread price has been raised. Sorry, you can't afford that bread.
Yeah,
classic.
They'll come up with some excuse. There's
Yeah.
bread
Well,
flu.
I'm going to take a shit on Walmart. So I refuse to go to Walmart now. I don't like the culture. I don't like going in there. Their stores are usually dirty.
They're just dark, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a safe place. You go into a Walmart and it's like the difference between a Walmart and a Target is night and day.
Oh, astronomical. Yeah. But if I have to go through the store and grab all of the items I need, especially if I'm doing a proper grocery run and I have a cart full of stuff, and the only thing open is a self checkout, and I have to sit there and wave something in front of the camera each time, prove like I'm not shoplifting,
Mm-hmm.
it's ridiculous. I can go anywhere else, get through my shopping experience 4 times faster, and also not be accused of shoplifting every single time I go.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting there, I'm doing like 2 or 3 things at once, scanning, trying to get out of there. It's like, replaying this. It's like, dude, there's nothing else in my hand. Like, I'm passing these over.
Right.
Like, I'm in clear view of the camera so you all can see what I'm doing. But it's insane.
I feel dirty whenever I go in the Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just some type of vibe, atmosphere with it. It just doesn't sit right with me.
Plus, there's so many cameras everywhere. It's like, I have no privacy in here whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's like well, then again, there's Target. They know when you're pregnant before you know that anyone else is pregnant. That's a true story.
who do these guys think they are? The CCP, given all the surveillance going on there.
I mean, that's what it feels like anytime you go into a Walmart.
Yeah.
You know, they have cameras in the parking lots, they have cameras everywhere else, but it's like, that's great. Like, it makes you feel a little bit safer, But the other part of you is like, why do you need so many cameras? What's going on? Do people really shoplift that often that this is not a safe place to be in? Because if so, I'm just gonna take my shopping elsewhere.
Right.
And now I have. It's like I refuse to go to Walmart.
Well, I think another point can be made is that people wouldn't be shoplifting if there was actually some fair price, fair products, fair services going on.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna use Lowe's for an example. Lowe's is fantastic. Like, yeah, they have cameras and self checkout and everything else. But you walk in, people are usually friendly. They'll greet you. Their customer service is usually pretty good. But just having people there like help you out works so much better than just planting all these like fake cameras and like everything else around and having zero human interaction the entire time you're in the store.
Hmm. This might get me canceled, but I mean, usually Walmart attracts people of lower income, whereas people like to correlate lower income with more crime. So, I mean, might be argued that's the reason why Walmart has so many cameras around because their people of lower income may lead to, I mean, higher rates of shoplifting because they want the items, maybe can't afford them, so may as well try to take them. I don't feel like the workers. I mean, most of them hate their jobs. Let's be honest here. So they aren't the
I
friendliest
don't know,
either.
man. The 90-year-old man that's forced to
Oh,
work
yeah.
there to make rent doesn't seem like he hates it too much when he says hi to me.
Damn, did you make a TikTok for him? Get him raise some money. But kind of another thing I've been seeing here. This has to deal with Japan, especially, but really, I mean, involves all over the place because all different countries are reporting this. Is birth rates are significantly declining. Japan's prime minister said that the country's over, or it's on the brink of almost collapse over the falling birth rates. Of course, again, as I said, it's reported basically everywhere. So the reasons for this are, which will they include a rising living costs, more women in education and work, greater access to contraception, and of course that argues that leads women to have fewer children. So the big question is, do we see this as a problem here in the United States? Because we're reporting the same thing. Is this
Yeah,
going to be
for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
For sure.
Mhm.
I think a big part of the problem is that women being educated and working isn't the problem. It's a component, but it's not women's fault. I don't want to suggest that at all. It's the government and the corporation's fault. This goes back to corporatism because corporations and landlords and banks see that the average couple now has double the income
Mhm.
because the woman is also working full time.
Right.
Therefore, they can charge double. And this makes it really, really hard for people to get by, especially single people. And when everyone's spending all their time at work, they don't have time to raise a family.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't really raise a family with one person making sole income anymore either. It's not like back in the 50s when you could do that. Everybody essentially has to work, both the mom and dad, unless you're making absolute bank, which is not very common. So it's like rising living costs. I mean, I think that's
But
the major factor in it.
more so, if you don't have the money to buy clean products,
Hmm.
you're out too. There's a article out from Politico with the headline, "No More Babies, the Hormone Altering Chemicals Threatening Human Procreation."
Hmm.
They say that sperm counts are set to reach zero in 2045. So it says down here, and we'll cite this down below for everyone who wants to read it. By 2045, most men may no longer be able to reproduce because of the impact of hormone altering chemicals. They're everywhere. We have microplastics, which are a huge, huge endocrine disruptor, especially for men. Like water bottles, a lot of the time still contain BPA. Receipt paper is huge in BPA that we get exposed to, especially if you work retail. You have to touch receipts all the time. Most deodorants, most laundry detergents, tap water. There's so many different endocrine disruptors around here, especially for men. Like, yes,
Right.
a lot of these endocrine disruptors will have a negative effect on women's estrogen, but most of these are estrogen like compounds that just destroy men's testosterone and what we need in order for our bodies to thrive.
Yeah. There's also been the rise of artificial meat products and other soy based products. And if you didn't know, Soy actually metabolizes as a form of estrogen if you consume too much of it,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously is not great for men.
Yeah, I remember even when I was little, my dad is a board certified neurologist, and he was like, "Don't eat soy. Don't ever eat it. It's like it's not worth it." So from that point on, I avoided soy. Another big thing is trying to get enough daylight. Vitamin D is huge, but I'm going to kind of stay away from medical aspect of this because I don't want to make recommendations that I'm not necessarily qualified to make. But talking about the impact of it, the impact is great. Could you imagine no one was able to reproduce after 2040?
Yeah, there'd be no more human race.
Yeah, but no one's talking
it's
about it.
just done over.
Yeah, but again, no one is talking about this. No one is really standing up and petitioning the government to get rid of all these, endocrine disruptors. No one is filtering out the microplastics in the tap water or the phthalates or changing up the laundry detergent that everyone uses.
Maybe
or
they
the
want a
soap.
population drop.
Yeah, like your Axe body wash, Jared. It's full of phthalates and everything else they're horrible endocrine disruptors. Now, I know a couple different companies have switched to BPA-free receipt paper,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much more that needs to be done, and the clock is ticking.
Right. That's definitely a factor for sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing driving it right now is it's just simply the living costs at the moment. It's like, why would you want to have a baby when you can't even afford to live basically on your own, or you're trying to, maybe you're living with your wife or husband, and you're working like two jobs to make ends meet. It's like, can we really bring a child into this world? We have to struggle to get by. It's like, I think that's a big factor at the moment. I mean, contraception's always been there. Of course, that's one of the possible reasons it lists, but I mean, this is happening all over. Even last week, China reported its first population decline, birth decline.
Yeah, well, that has to do more. I think that in China's case, that has to do more with the one-child policy, the terrible zero-COVID policy, as well as doing the CCP, what the CCP doing what the CCP does, oppress its population.
Mm-hmm.
But even over here, birth rate is dropping.
Yep.
And this is another interesting point. Men's testosterone back, we can call it the 90s, right? The typical score that you were looking for is 800 to 1,000. I think it's nanograms per deciliter. Anyway, the number is like 800 to 1,000. Most men nowadays are like 300 to 400. So much so that they're now like lowering the standard of what's normal. It's like, no, hold on. This is not normal. This is a drop, and it's a combined societal drop. That doesn't mean it's normal. Something is happening, and we need to fix it.
There's also a big difference between normal and common. People seem to conflate the two.
Mm-hmm.
Something can be common, that doesn't make it normal, and that doesn't make it good.
Yeah, like, I hate to go all Alex Jones here and say the water's turning all the frogs gay. But he was right. The study showed that all these male frogs had started changing into female frogs because of the presence of phthalates and runoff and stuff in the water. But the same thing is kind of happening here. Not that men are turning into women necessarily, but it is having an effect on the male population, and something has to be done. It's like if we see it out in nature, it's like, oh yeah, that's nature. Like it's having a change. Let's investigate it. But when it's happening to humans, for some unknown reason, it's whatever.
I mean, I guess awareness is the best thing to go about it, but there have been really large studies launched that haven't been censored.
But here's the thing: we are animals, right? Humans are mammals. We're not some like other species out there.
We're not some magical secret third thing.
Yeah.
It's like we might be above other animals, but at our core, we're still part of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, and if you have environmental factors, they will end up affecting us as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're not special in that way.
It's like we talked about in our second show. People write off dietary changes, getting more sunlight as just useless garbage, but we're living things. We need certain dietary needs. We need a certain amount of sunlight. Environmental conditions and what we put in our bodies and how we treat our bodies absolutely does matter.
We are all living creatures. We apply to the rules of nature. So, I definitely think, Matt, as you said, more awareness does need to be brought to this.
My point with this being, if this was in a select group of other animals or other primates, and they notice like, oh my god, like this one species of gorilla is going to go extinct by 2030 because all the silverback gorillas can't reproduce anymore, everyone would be up in arms. Like, oh my god, the animals are going to die. The animals are going to die. Yet, when it's humans, they're like, oh, it's okay. We don't need men anyway. Goes downhill, and no one really cares.
Even if another animal was facing an extinction level crisis and it wasn't caused by mankind, humans would still be up in arms and upset about it. And actually, in that case, I'd say it's not our job to interfere unless we are causing it, which we are causing harm to ourselves and probably to other animals. I mean, there have been studies that have shown that polluted ponds cause frogs to spontaneously change gender unnecessarily.
Suppose at the end of the day, nobody's concerned with anything unless it directly affects them themselves.
Exactly, Ashton. I mean, look at COVID when it first started. I mean, we didn't care about it until it started shutting everything down for us in China.
All the men listening to this podcast, you better stand up and start doing something about it.
Right. I mean, it's kind of how human nature works until it directly affects us. I mean, we don't really pay much attention to it. I mean, we can show empathy, but at the same time, we're still
self-serving.
Yeah, self-serving. There you go. And Ashton, I know, let's briefly touch upon this. I mean, it's kind of making the headlines today with we're sending tanks, Abram tanks, into Ukraine. So what's going on there?
From what I've been seeing, this has actually been in development for a little bit of a while. I think France kind of started the trend with deploying a type of a variant of the AMX-10 that has a 105mm gun.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also been some deployment of other tanks to Ukraine previously, such as Slovakia-modified T-55s that have been heavily modernized. But I think what makes this significant is that Ukraine is finally getting its hands on advanced, I guess, Gen 3 Western-made main battle tanks, such as the Leopard 2, A5 and A6, the M1 Abrams, and the Challenger 2.
So, Cameron, you'll find this interesting. Let me rephrase this, Ashton. What percentage of the Ukraine fighting force do you think is civilian over there?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's okay, it doesn't have to be exact.
No, I think you might need to define what exactly Ukraine fighting force you're talking about. Are you talking about the full, the professional army? Are you talking about the National Guard? Are you talking about the Territorial Defense Force?
Just in general. Because it seems like a lot of civilians have gotten arms and they're taking to defend their country.
Yeah, those guys would be classified under the category of the TDFs, the Territorial Defense Forces.
So are any of these tanks going to the TDF?
To my knowledge, no. I think these are all going to the professional Ukrainian army.
That's good. I was going to be pretty concerned if the U.S. was just like giving Abrams to other citizens.
Well,
here's
the thing, though. I don't think the U.S. needs to give tanks to the TDF, considering that with their tractors, they can basically just steal any from the Russians that happen to bog down.
Yeah, it's happened before.
But anyways, I kind of want to touch upon, I guess, briefly the implications of what this could mean. Now, we need to be careful with making the assumption that these are going to turn the tide of the war overnight. It's always a bad assumption to think that X weapon is going to be a massive game changer. You always see these stupid hyperbolic videos or news articles where the guy's saying, like, this weapon terrifies NATO. It's not even the guy speaking, it's just a text-to-speech program.
Yeah.
Those videos bug the shit out of me. But I do think that this is definitely going to be a significant upgrade for Ukraine, its military, seeing as that the bulk of their forces is mainly reliant on old Cold War era T-64s, T-72s, and T-80s, as well as some of their own homegrown modifications, such as the T-84 Oblot, as well as whatever they can steal from the Russians. But I definitely think that Ukraine will definitely need these sorts of tanks for their future advances to kick the Russians out.
But are there not classified aspects to these Abram tanks that are still being withheld from the general public?
I think that mostly has to do with the Cobham armor plating, but
regardless, do you really think it's a good idea to just export our ground force and say, oh yeah, here's some toys, go play with them, while they may or may not still have classified systems on them?
Well, here's the thing.
Putting them out in front.
Here's the thing.
We're not the ones at war.
Well, here's the thing, though. That stuff's already happened in the Middle East several times.
Yeah, we do it a whole lot, actually. Give our military
Yeah.
I mean, when we left Afghanistan,
Oh,
we,
Jesus, don't even
yeah.
get me started on that.
You know
That
how much
was
stuff
dumb.
we left.
Don't get me started on
That was a shit show, no doubt.
Jesus Christ.
Ashton, if I had to turn what you said into a headline, you said it might make a difference. You know what media would probably title that? It'd say tanks or Abrams tanks coming into Ukraine a game changer. Ukraine war ending soon? Question mark.
Yeah, that seems to. That's definitely what.
Non-sexual.
Oh god.
Question mark.
Jared, what else do they use to do clickbait stuff? I know there's like two. What else is there?
I think another thing is like these sort of like heavily photoshopped sort of pictures of like some sort of crazy futuristic vehicle, tank, or airplane.
Hover
Yeah.
tanks.
Yeah. Bonus points if you feel like a big red circle.
Oh yeah,
on
the red
something.
circle.
Oh yeah, with the arrows and white
Yeah.
Putin.
Half naked women in the background.
But I think the Ukrainians are definitely going to get an upgrade. And I want to say up front, we're not giving them the latest and the greatest that we've got. These are basically the same Abrams tanks that went into Operation Desert Storm back in 1991.
Mhm.
They're not as advanced as the latest M1A2 SEP V4.
I was gonna hope not.
Even still, that should be enough to deal with the bulk of what Russia's deployed. Considering that in Iraq, Abrams tanks, M1A1 Abrams tanks fought against T-72s, and guess what's in Ukraine right now? Actually, on both sides. T-72s, you've also got the T-80s and the T-90s, but generally I think NATO tanks are going to have the advantage in the fact that, from what I can gather, they have superior optics and fire control systems, giving them, and as well as better long-range performance on their shells. So they're going to have a lot more range to them. They can basically dictate the terms of the engagement in any tank, basically in any tank-on-tank combat. But tank-on-tank combat's actually quite rare, believe it or not. Though even still, those Abrams, Leopard, and Challenger tanks are definitely going to be a major help for the Ukrainians as they make their next counterattack.
So happy to see my tax dollars at work.
Hey man, at least it's only a tank from 1991, so at least I'm not spending that much more on it.
Yeah, really the only costs that are
Allegedly.
burdened by us taxpayers is basically the training, the logistics, and the transport. After that, it's basically Ukraine's.
Yep.
Oh, well, they can
Well,
just pay
golly.
for it with all the
Yeah.
aid we sent them.
Yeah, I'm glad they are getting all this money from us they can use to pay us.
I'm proposing a $2.7 billion new package, so don't worry, it's coming soon.
And one last thing I kind of want to touch on this sort of topic is basically what I've kind of determined as Russia's pattern, reaction pattern, I would like to say, to the West shipping them all this sort of new type of gear. They did it with the Slovakian S-300 anti-aircraft system. Well, that was technically an Eastern system that was used to try and hold the Ukrainians over until they get some more some new air defense systems from the West. They did this with the HIMARS. They did this with the AGM-88 HARM. And they're doing this with the Patriot systems, and they're doing it with the Abrams tanks, and I'm pretty sure they're going to do that when Ukraine gets its hands on new fighter jets. I've heard that's currently in the works right now, trying to figure out what sort of fighter jets Ukraine will get. But the pattern I've kind of determined...
F4 Phantoms. That's all they need.
Sure about that?
They don't deserve our good stuff.
Anyways, kind of the pattern I've seen with how Russian, particularly a lot of pro-Russian, both state-sponsored and private pro-Russian sources out there, their reaction is basically, step one is they basically make this sort of giant reaction saying, this is too far, this is escalating things too far, throwing the ambiguatory nuclear threat here and there for dramatic effect. Phase two, when it's actually confirmed that this sort of thing is going to Ukraine, the Russians basically brush it off like, this won't make much of a difference. Russian tech is superior anyway. And then phase three, when the systems actually start arriving in Ukraine, Russia basically makes these sorts of bogus claims that all this equipment was basically just destroyed the instant it entered the country by higher superior Iskandar ballistic missiles, only for that system to turn up later and actually start wreaking havoc, as had happened with the HIMARS system.
It's a good cycle. I always love the threats. You're like, oh, you've done it this time. We're going to nuke you for real.
Yeah. It's because of that cycle that I don't fear Russia, and neither should you.
Common Russia, Al.
Common Russia.
You know what? I don't know about the Russia side of things, but I kind of feel like our government is low-key money laundering via proxy war. Think about it. We pay our tax dollars to our government. We don't get a choice on this, mind you. They hold on. They take our tax dollars, send it to Ukraine. They take it and give it back to the government to pay them for shit that we're sending them. And who gets the money back? Not us. It's the government. So they've taken all of these tax dollars, spent it on foreign aid and defense, and then just taken it back in.
Well, hopefully they're making some money on it.
If that's not textbook money laundering, I don't know what is.
You know how many proxy wars we funded in our lifetime as a country? Especially during the Cold War, we funded so many proxy wars. even down in Latin America, when all those socialist dictators were in place, we're like, oh, we're gonna fund the Contra. Good luck, have fun.
Or just how many the CIA have funded.
Yeah, exactly. I think half their money is from money laundering. Basically.
Probably that and drug money.
That's true.
Golly, we can always count on the CIA to introduce a little crack cocaine into low-income communities.
Yeah, opioids bring them back.
Right now, God and topple regimes like Gaddafi.
That's how we do it here in America.
I smell oil. Let's give them a little bit of freedom.
A10s, I love that sound. Freedom sound.
Even though the A10 should probably be retired by now, and you guys can fight me on that.
Sound of freedom. Okay.
I'm fine with them retiring it as long as I'm able to buy one for personal use.
They're cool, but I don't think that gun is that accurate.
Cameron, I know the last thing we can talk about here, you had some problems with the U.S. Postal Service. So, what's your beef with and Discord? You said,
I mean,
the USPS.
This isn't like I don't have a big story to talk about. I just wanted to vent about the USPS.
What's wrong with the USPS?
I think the USPS sucks. So yesterday I had a package coming in, and nobody told me that I had to be there to accept it or sign for it or anything. But they just left a little slip and was like, yeah, nobody was home to accept this, and there's no secure place to leave it, even though my entire porch is like blocked from view from the road with bushes, and they could put it under a chair where nobody can see it. Never in my 22, almost 23 years of living at this house have I ever had a package stolen. My dad's never had a package stolen in his 23 years of living at this house.
Well, you see, the problem is your chair doesn't have a lock on it.
So it's ridiculous. And then I couldn't even go on the website to schedule like a redelivery because when you punch in your postal code, it automatically adds like the last 4 digits that are like your extra specific postal code or whatever. And that didn't match the original delivery address because I just gave them my regular 5-digit postal code. So I had no way to reschedule this thing. I had to drive to the post office to pick it up. And that just really aggravated me. Like, the USPS is just incompetent and slow, and they don't do their job, and I don't like them.
So like every government entity, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do the IRS next.
I think the IRS sucks.
Let me tell you why. Well, I mean, I haven't actually. Is there any update to that bill that they proposed? Remember, was that episode 2?
Oh, tax bill?
Yeah, when they're trying to get.
The only thing I saw related to it was it was going to be a flat 30% sales tax. That's it, which would be wonderful. So I think I did the math on it, and I would have to spend like $4,000 a month to pay more in tax than what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so worth it.
In theory, it should be worth it. The problem is that the government really likes to have its cake and eat it too. So what's really likely to happen is they partially adopt this. So you pay flat 30% on everything, but also you still have to pay your income tax. And that would just be awful.
Boston Tea Party.
Boston Tea Party. Here's the latest headline. The Democrats hammer GOP plan to impose national sales tax and abolish the IRS.
Come on, AOC, what are you doing? Leave those Democrats. We're trying to do something good here. Like, lower taxes. Is this not what you want? Wouldn't this help all the low-income people you represent?
They're hammering that plan.
I hate the clickbait headlines everyone does nowadays. It's like no one is hammering diddly shit. Like, okay, they're talking about it. They disagree. There's your headline.
They slammed
Shut up.
that. They slammed that down. Yeah, it's gone ridiculous. I mean, I think I said this. It's like episode 2, so we probably couldn't even hear what we were saying, anyways. But I think we said that bill probably didn't have any chance of pass at all. So I mean, the Democrats are probably hammering it down. So it doesn't surprise me.
Hey, but they better come back and propose a 20% tax then.
No.
Everybody's for more regulation until it restricts how they can use things.
Very true, Ash.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Stupid double standards.
Exactly. All right, well, you guys have anything else you want to talk about here? We're going to wrap things up for today.
I hate the World Economic Forum.
As do I. Screw Klaus Schwab and his cronies.
Damn. Get out of nowhere.
I hate the Antichrist. I hate the Antichrist.
I guess we should have. Should this be an official segment from here on out? Where we be?
This week's reason why we hate the World Economic Forum.
I remember my political science class in college. We had this like introductory assignment, and one of the questions on it was, in your opinion, why do we need a government? You want to know what I put?
Yes.
We don't.
The Ron Swanson answer.
Full credit. It worked.
Oh, nice.
Bravo.
We need to bring a socialist on here. That would make it entertaining. You know any socialists? Bring them on.
Sorry, I don't.
Probably know a couple, actually. Bring them on.
Here's the thing. I don't feel like they're that much different. So, obviously, as I stated earlier, I'm overtly pro-capitalist. But I understand where they're coming from, in that there needs to be more humanity within the system. That I agree with. So I think at the end of the day, they just want better conditions for everyone. Now, free stuff doesn't fix that, as we see in North Korea and Russia and everywhere else.
China.
But the humanitarian aspect of their belief, I completely agree with. It would be interesting to see if we can come to some sort of agreement on how to make the economy work better for individuals versus as corporations. I think they have some merit. I think it's just a little bit misguided.
We're tweeting at AOC.